Are you the fanatic we're looking for? Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is the only interactive and dynamic mock draft simulator. Dynamic means that the picks from one mock draft will influence the players that team selects in the next mock draft. This can be done with a first-round challenge. This can be done with a second-round challenge. This will be done with any mock draft from the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has rank players functionality, allowing you to rank players and build your own big board and then compare your board to that of other users at the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has draft a team functionality. This allows 2 or more users to snake draft a team of 22 players from the rookie pool, and then you can debate which players you like at which position and why. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This is the first of 2 podcasts today, but before we get into Senior Bowl, we have Bill, Cole, and Anthony with us. Anthony, how are you doing today?
Good. Happy to be back. Happy to talk about some players that, slight spoiler, I think we have some pretty differing opinions on. So it's gonna be a good time.
Awesome. Hey, Cole, how are you?
No, I'm amped up. I'm ready to go. We got some nice players on this list today.
Cool. So second straight night for Cole, so he's like pulling like double duties. So much appreciated, Cole. So Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jim. You know, we're here Friday night. We're here to talk some Senior Bowl prospects. You know, I've said it all week. The draft may start in Mobile, but class is in session here at the Draft Professor. And before we get diving in, let's do a little housekeeping to start with. If you're watching with us right now, make sure that you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the Draft Professor YouTube channel. Turn on that bell for notifications. We've got daily draft content. Like Jim said, we've got a main event episode tonight as well. We're going to double down on Friday. We got an episode after us here. Make sure that you follow all of us on social media. I am on X at Spark Scouting. You can also find me at Draft Detectives. I also write for CadesDraftRoom.com. You can find Anthony on X as well, Anthony_Russo97. Cole on X as well, ColeP_NFL, all lowercase. And our lovely host, Arvana White, to our Pat Sajax. Jim is an NFL draft fanatic, no I in fanatic on X. But Jim, I think that's all the housekeeping we've got. Do we want to go ahead and get this thing kicked off?
Absolutely. So one of the Senior Bowl players we're going to start with here today is Jonah Monheim, a offensive lineman from USC. Don't let the center fool you, but Bill, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, so Jonah Monheim from USC, 6'5", 315. This guy is a good athlete for the position. Like Jim said, this is a guy, he's listed at center, but he's logged snaps at tackle. He's logged snaps at guard. He's got positional flexibility all across the line. I think his future is inside at the pivot at center, especially with his football IQ. Very natural knee bender. It's consistent in his pad level. You don't necessarily have to worry about him playing too high with leverage. He does have some issues with his run blocking. It lacks behind his pass protection. He's a really good pass protector, but his run blocking is concerning for me. He is a little experienced at making line calls from the center position, so that's something that he will need to work on at the next level. Like I said, this guy, for me, when I'm looking at true centers, not converted centers, like a guy played guard in college, can you slide him inside? Or a guy played tackle in college and he's athletic enough, let's kick him inside. True centers that played center in college. Jonah Monheim is my center one, and I have him within my top 100 selections. Reminds me a lot of Cam Jurgens. When Cam Jurgens was coming out of college, there was questions about him. Could he play center? Could he make those line calls? But he was very athletic. I think Jonah can make that transition. If he doesn't. He is still a really great guard. He just needs to work on some of his run blocking technique and some of his footwork with run blocking. But Cole, what do you have on the USC product?
Yeah, obviously super smooth mover, super athletic. He has a tackle, nice kick slide, nice vertical sets, good hand placement. I get concerned on kind of his play strength a lot. It's not good. The Michigan game was very, very concerning, and I know Bill can attest to that because we have spoken on that game specifically for Monheim.
Yep.
It's just when you're going into the NFL and your play strength is that poor, which it's no shot at Monheim because it happens. Roger Rosengarten last year was like really bad play strength, and I don't think it's on the same level as Monheim's, but obviously room to grow there, room to get in the weight room. He's a little light. If you're going to be a center, like Phil suggests, I personally do like him a little bit better at tackle, but he has the shape and size of a center, which I love. I'd like to see him put on probably like 10-ish, 12-ish more pounds if he's going to move to center full time and still keep some of that athleticism. Because unless he's going into a Jeff Stoutland run game where there's a lot of center pulls and that's kind of the bread and butter, he doesn't need to be that super athletic type of guy because it's kind of, you look at Aaron Brewer of the Dolphins, yeah, you can get him out on screens, but it comes back to bite him in the ass when he can't take on a single block because he's just too light in the pants. So I'd like to see him add some more weight there. I have a comp to him of Zach Tom of the Green Bay Packers, super athletic tackle who there was rumors coming out of Wake Forest. He could play guard, center, play everything you want. So that's kind of where I am with Monheim. I have him about like a top 150 to 175-ish range. So like that early to like middle, like round 4, round 5 type range for Monheim.
Okay. Anthony, what do you have on Jonah Monheim?
Yeah, I'm just honestly going to echo a lot of everything you guys said. I think any team that takes him, you're taking him because of the athleticism and the versatility that he brings. He's played all 5 positions on the offensive line. He is a super athlete, like you guys talked about. Cole mentioned it. Man, that Michigan tape is rough. Mason Graham just like whooped him the entire game. It is not a good moment for Jonah Monheim. And there were a few games like that. He played against tougher competition and just was consistently getting beat. One thing I'll add too, there's never really, when he gets beat, it's pretty much over. Like there's never an opportunity for him to like maybe recover and like save himself on a play. It feels like if he loses a rep. So that's potentially something he can work on. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys too. 5th, 6th round is kind of where I would peg him. I think he's going to be sort of like a bench player in the NBA where he can kind of be on a roster, and if an injury happens, he can come in and play a position, but I don't really expect him to be a long-term starter in the league.
So I'd like to add a couple things. So shout out to Newt in the chat. So Newt, if I remember when you gave your scouting report, a couple things that haven't been mentioned yet. This is a very experienced offensive lineman, like 2,000 snaps. I think I remember Newt, and I think Anthony, you pointed out all 5 offensive line positions. So last year, Monheim was a tackle. And anybody that watched the podcast last year when we podcasted Monheim, Corey Krabowski was pounding the table for Monheim as a tackle in round 2. Right? So there's definitely some hype on the prospect, and he is very experienced. Right? So there's going to be plenty of other offensive linemen we talk about that haven't gotten 2,000 college snaps yet, whereas Monheim has. So I definitely wanted to make sure that got pointed out. But, Bill, we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's dive into the next one, which is Ozzy Trapilo from Boston College. And, folks, you are seeing that correctly. 6'8", 309. He is a mammoth of a man at the offensive line. Creates a wide blocking radius when you're 6'8" and 309. It's very hard to get around someone of that size. He has positional versatility. This is a guy that's played both left tackle and right tackle at Boston College, so he can play both sides of that. Very impressive anchor. This is a guy that's not going to get pushed back into a quarterback's lap very easily. He can handle bull rushes very well. The one thing that I really love, he is a nasty finisher. He is looking to put you in the dirt 6 feet under long after the whistle has blown. He also has what I like to call Iron Man durability. Most of the time logging full game snaps, no injury history to be even spoken of. The big knock for Ozzy, though, is when you're that tall, you are a little bit of a waist bender. So you're going to give up some unnecessary leverage. You also do have a little bit of limited lateral agility when you're that big. You know, you see it with guys like DeJuan Jones for Cleveland, where they're that larger tackle. They struggle to bend very well. They struggle to move sideline to sideline very well. His run blocking technique does need a little bit of work. His hands and his punch are very good, but his overall technique could use some work. But for me, this is a guy, he has the prototypical size of a big body tackle. I think his future in the NFL is at right tackle. For me, I have him firmly locked into round 2 right now. He's actually my offensive line number 7 on my big board. I group my tackles and guards together till we get closer down the line. Reminds me a lot of Mike McGlinchey when he was at Notre Dame. Same big size guy, very good in pass protection, needed a little bit of refinement on the run blocking. But Cole, what do you see about the Boston College offensive lineman?
Yeah, so Ozzy is a guy that popped out to me. I was requested by a buddy of mine to take a look at Jude Bowery, the left tackle, and I got sidetracked because I saw Ozzy just making some sick athletic plays. This guy's a surefire pass blocker. You're going to have no worries about him getting set vertically against a wide 9, jump setting a 5 technique, or anything of the sort, picking up a TE twist, a loop, a green dog, whatever you want. He's smart between the ears. Stunts don't really give him that much of problems identifying them, at least. I do think sometimes he is that 6'8", so like Bill said, that like phone booth movement can get a little. But with Ozzy, it doesn't scare me because his clamp is strong. He is strong. He's a finisher in the run game. Actually just a complete mauler. He loves going at it in the run game. But I really like him in like a pass heavy type of scheme. And I do like Bill's comp of Mike McGlinchey, but mine was also a Broncos tackle in Garrett Bowles. Ooh. So I kind of have Ozzy in like that like third compensatory type round, like pick 100, like 98 to like 101 or whatever, however many there are. Like that sort of like fringe third, early fourth at the latest. That's kind of what I see with Ozzy. This is going to be a guy who's going to have a high RAS, if I had to guess, as well.
Yep, absolutely. Anthony, what do you have on Ozzy Trapilo from Boston College?
Yeah, I've been on the Ozzy Trapilo hype train for a while now. I put out a My Guys team back in like, I think it was like October, and he was on it. He is, you talked about it, that's such a solid anchor, does so well with his size and his length, being able to just keep guys in front of him and keep them locked up. And we talked about it with Monheim. Ozzy Trapilo also has played both tackle spots and both guard spots in his college career. So again, that versatility is definitely something NFL teams will like and look for. And I'd be curious if I don't think it would happen at this size, 6'8", 309. If he fills out the frame a little more, potentially kicks inside, I could see it. But I agree with you, Bill. I think he is a right tackle at this point in the NFL. If he can just improve his kick out, improve his just overall footwork and movement skills, I think this is a long-term right tackle, particularly in a gap run scheme. That's a lot of what they did at Boston College. And I think that's what his skill set would really cater to.
Okay. Love to see it. So next one on the board is edge from Ole Miss, Princely Umanmielen. If I butcher that, I'm sorry. This guy, 6'5", 260. I've seen 245, 250, 260, so right in that range, but he accelerates very rapidly. He has a really great feel for angles and pass rush. A high football IQ, very good reactionary athletic ability, excellent length and wingspan. It's very underrated for people that I see talk about Princely. They don't talk about his length and wingspan enough. The one thing that I love is his motor is consistently running. He's like your neighbor's Lamborghini, right? It's got that really nice motor that you want to keep going and going and going all throughout the fourth quarter. His spin move is an NFL all-pro caliber spin move. It puts tackles in a blender and hits puree. He also has very good tackling ability. When he gets his hands on you, he's not going to miss if he gets his hands on you. The big things I'd like to see from Princely, of course, I'd love to see him learn how to convert speed to power a little bit more in his pass rush. He does also lose his pad level occasionally on the first step. Sometimes comes in a little too high and a little too hot, so he gives up unnecessary leverage. He can be predictable in his pass rush. I talked about this with Newt on a previous episode. It seems that he likes to favor the outside shoulder and run around offensive tackles. I'd like to see him work on running through or running in between on the inside shoulders. All in all, though, I have a firm round 2 grade on Princely. I think right now he's sitting on my board as my 6th edge. Even though I have a round 2 grade on him, I could see him coming into the first round, probably in that middle first round when we talk about the playoff teams. 2 schemes that I'd love to see him in, Seattle and Baltimore, that same defensive style of scheme where you ask your edges to do a couple of different things. But Anthony, I'll throw it to you. What do you think about Princely from Ole Miss?
He is. I think he just looks the part so much. He's got the frame. He's got the length. I love his first step and his burst off the line. And he's able to win with speed, but he's also able to win with actual pass rush moves. I don't think his bend is particularly great. I don't think it's like bad. But I wish he could improve his bend just a little bit. I think my biggest thing with him is just consistency. I feel like he disappears a lot too often for a guy as talented as we can see that he is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why at this point, I think he's a day 2 guy, especially in such a stacked edge class. I think that's kind of working against him is he has a lot of tough competition. He's edge 10 for me, which I think sounds worse than it actually is. Cause again, he's a day 2 player, but there's a lot of edge guys that are going to be really highly touted. So if he can just show that he can be the Princely Umanmielen 100% of the time and can just work on the little things, he's definitely going to be a dangerous player in the league.
Yep, absolutely. Cole, what do you have on the Ole Miss edge rusher?
I just want to firstly start out with saying I'm definitely way lower than consensus, even way lower than both of you two, who don't even seem overly high on Princely. And I also want to quickly apologize to my buddies at Ole Miss before I give this report, because it's nothing towards them or Princely. I do think he's a good player. I think his juice is sort of overrated. He has a nice first step. Not going to discredit that. It's a wicked first step, but around the bend, it just doesn't always seem full speed. Like Bill or Anthony had said, I forget which one. It's predictable pass rush plan. It's spin, ghost, rip. I don't really like getting into pass rush bag, but when you're literally only rushing from a wide 9 or a wider 5 technique and you're just using those, at some point in the NFL, it's gonna stop working for you, because the NFL tackles who are starting have better technique than the college tackles that are starting. It's a known thing. Somebody had brought up the Georgia game in the chat that I had seen, and he did dominate, but it also comes down to the fact that the Georgia tackles weren't very good. As someone that really liked Ernest Green earlier in the year, it just became bad. Xavier Truss had some draft hype coming into the year, and it just didn't work out for them. And Princely Umanmielen had really good PFF grades against the weaker teams or the weaker tackles. And it's because he can out-athlete to a certain point. Once he starts going against these tackles at the Senior Bowl who can move a little bit better than the guys that he was facing, I will want to see how he does there. I think his bend is okay. Like I said, I think his burst is okay. His bag's questionable, and there's obviously he already apologized for it, so I'm not going to even go to that particular event. But there are a few reps where he does kind of just stop in the run game when it's not to his side, which did change from Florida tape to Ole Miss tape. But I did just want to quickly kind of go over that. As Anthony said, way worse than it sounds. He is my edge 16 with a firm 3rd round grade.
So, Cole, let me ask you a question. Is there anything that Princely could show you during the Senior Bowl practices that would change where he is on your board? Could he move up, showing you that maybe he has a better pass rush bag than your scouting report gave him credit for, or you've seen what you need to see? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, and like I had mentioned earlier, pass rush bag isn't like a huge thing for me, but like literally that was his only, like one of his only thing was either work outside, and then like maybe you'll get lucky and see him rip inside 1 or 2 times a game. So I just want to see him go to the Senior Bowl, and I want to see if he can win with some power, maybe show some of that length that he has a little bit more, and just overall win against some of those highly touted tackles that are going that we will also be talking about in a little bit.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. And just to wrap up Princely, I know that there's some folks out there that have mentioned quote unquote character concerns with Princely, especially Cole, you hit on it a little bit after the Florida game, the scuffle. A couple of contacts that I've talked with at that Ole Miss Florida game said that there were some unruly comments that were hurled at Princely, and he immediately apologized for it after.
I've heard that as well. That's why I didn't want to. Yep.
There's no red flags on mine from a character concern perspective. I think this guy is perfectly fine as an NFL pro moving forward.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Lee Harvey and Kadeem in the chat. So Lee has a lot of good cut-ups. Like I quote his tweets a lot when I'm PRing the podcast. So if you're watching the podcast right now, go ahead and find Lee Harvey on X. Give him a follow. He has draft content just as good as the 4 of us here on the podcast. So definitely give Lee. I definitely wanted to give him a shout out, as well as Kadeem. I believe Kadeem is a Dolphins podcaster, and he will probably be on another Mrs. R Relevant podcast coming soon to a computer near you. So anyways, wanted to give those guys a shout out. Bill, are you ready for the next?
Yeah, let's dive into the next one. We're going to go back to Boston College for this one. Donovan Ezeriaku from Boston College, and Cole's hyped up because every reason to be. 6'2", 247. This guy has exceptional bend and ankle flexibility to be able to cut around the edge. A disciplined edge setter in the run game as well, maintains his gaps very well. He's also versatile. This is a guy you could put as a 4-3 defensive end. You could put him as a 3-4 outside linebacker. Shows really good instincts as a pass rusher. It's natural for him to get after the quarterback. He also shows experience dropping into coverage. I saw him several times. He would drop into zone coverage on blitzes and not have to worry about it. The big concern that I have for Donovan, though, is his frame. At 6'2", 247, he's a little undersized to play the edge. He's a little too big to play the linebacker. So where does he fit in at the next level in terms of his size and frame? He also does struggle to disengage once an offensive lineman gets his hands on him. Part of that is being 247 pounds. He just doesn't have that necessary play strength to disengage well. His get off at the snap can be inconsistent. On some plays, it's immediate. As soon as that ball snapped, he's going. And in some plays, there's a small delay. That all being said, I like Donovan Ezeriaku. He is my edge 8 on my big board right now, right firmly in that late round 2, early round 3 range. My comp for him is Samson Ebukam for the Indianapolis Colts, that same kind of flex style player, whether it's edge or linebacker. For me personally, I think he should slim down just ever so slightly down to about the 240 marker, play outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme, but I know some people want to see him at edge. Cole, I know Donovan is high on your radar and you're very hyped up about him. I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss the Boston College edge rusher.
Yeah, so awesome bend, awesome athlete, freakishly long arms for 6'2". I've heard 33 and a half. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's more than 32. I know that for a fact. It is greater than 32 inches, which at 6'2" is, as an edge rusher, is pretty nice if you're going to be undersized. Those long arms will help. 247, I have him closer to 252 from who I've spoken to. Awesome athlete, versatile. Jim should know what I'm about to say because I just said it about 8 times to the linebackers. Edge, will, hybrid, Dante Hightower, Flores scheme, Dre Greenlaw. Those types of fits for Donovan would be perfect. He can come off the edge. He has experience dropping into flats off the edge. He can play a 9. He can play a 5. I don't think he can play a 4-eye, but that's a conversation for another day. He does struggle to get off blocks a little bit once tackles get hands-on, as his play strength is not the greatest. But you watch the Missouri game where he's going against my guy and Marcus Bryant, who I like a lot, who's big and strong. And Ezeriaku is just flying out there. He's flying around the edge. He's flying inside. He even has some reps where he's long-arming a 6'8", 340-pound tackle into the dirt, which doesn't happen at 6'2", 247. That's like fucking unheard of. Then he goes to the other side and does the same shit to Armin Mabu. I probably botched his name, so I want to apologize there, but does the same thing to the right tackle, who gets a lot of draft type, like top 50 draft type.
Yep.
And does it again and again and again, and he's just ruining the game. And he does that a lot. His production's crazy. He has great PFF grades, which I don't love using PFF. But his grades are good. Great production, sacks, pressures, hits, everything like that. I have a grade of about a 2nd to a 3rd. So I am in that like late 2nd round. Mm-hmm. But it's mainly because I don't trust the tackle play that he went against this year. Outside of that Missouri game and like 2 others, it was suspect. So if he goes to that Senior Bowl and he just dominates like I think he should be able to do, and he does have 33-inch arms at 6'2", I would have no problem shooting out to round 1. I don't give a shit. 33-inch arms, strong. Yeah, sign me up. Do it.
Right. So, Anthony, I know that's hard to follow, but I'm going to kick it over to you for Ezeriaku. What do you got on him?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little disappointed. Cole was all hyped up, went on this whole thing, and then said 2nd or 3rd rounder.
I was thinking the same thing, Anthony. I was thinking the same exact thing.
I was fully expecting to see a 1st-round grade off the bat.
I think he is. I would take him late 1st. I would.
Oh, I would too.
If he goes somewhere, like you said, Minnesota, like that at 30, whatever, I think that's a great pick. Listen, you guys, I'm gonna echo what you guys said. The bend is amazing. He's athletic. He's quick. I think the biggest thing with him, his motor. I think he might have the best motor just of like any player, at least any edge player. Like he just constantly going for the ball, never stops, plays through the whistle. This dude is just on it all the time. You just love watching him play football. Yes, the play strength is not where it needs to be. I don't think he's as great a run defender as you would like. He has a 247-pound frame, so that's a bit to be expected. So he can work on that. But, man, he is just such a good rusher. Yeah, absolutely. I think he's worthy of a first-round pick. Again, I talked about like how crowded this edge class is, but he is a standout. So, yeah, Donovan Ezeriaku, we are fans.
So do we have a first-round comp for a player that is this size but that arm length?
Kwity Paye might have had a little more more weight to him, but didn't he have freakishly long arms?
Yeah, I would say Pay is probably going to be the closest. And even then, he wasn't a first rounder. He was early second, could have slipped into the first, but that's the hard part is when you have a guy of this size. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. I'd have to double check it. But yeah, the size with the freakishly long arms, it's very hard to see an athletic nightmare like that. But all right.
So round 1 pick 21. So
he was a first rounder. Okay. I for some reason thought he was early second, but yeah, first round. I think Pay's probably the closest, but I'm glad Anthony hit on motors and high motors because the next guy we're going to talk about is a guy who I think has the absolute best motor of any edge in this class, and it's Kyle Kennard from South Carolina, 6'5", 254. I said it once, I'll say it again. This is a guy who has the best motor, I think, of any player in this class. He plays through the whistle, after the echo of the whistle, after the quarter has ended, after the game has ended, after the refs are already on the flight back home. He's still playing. That's how good his motor is. This is a guy, he has a really good pass rush toolbox. His cross chop move will give offensive tackles nightmares at the NFL level. A very long frame for 6'5", 254. Very position versatile. He can work upright. He can put his hand in the dirt, multiple schemes. He also is a battle-tested guy. Week after week, game after game, he was out there. No injury issues, very durable. The big issues that I see from Kyle Kennard, however, is coming out of his stance, out of those 3-point stances, his pad level rises a little too high, so he gives up unnecessary leverage, which hurts him in the run game. He also is a little bit undersized, and what I mean by that is he's 6'5", 254, but it's a light 254. He lacks that sand in his pants that we talk about. He also is somewhat of a one-trick pony in his pass rush. While it's very developed, he doesn't have a whole lot of counters. He throws one move at you, whether it's one spin, whether it's one bull rush, something like that. If it doesn't work, he's kind of left out in the open. Like Lee's mentioning there in the chat, he did do very well giving Jalen Milroe fits every single where. For me, I have him as edge number 10, right around that mid-second round range. Reminds me a lot of Dante Fowler Jr. when he came out of Florida, a guy with a very good developed pass rush, but didn't really have that counter to it. What I'm going to want to see from him in Mobile is once that initial move goes through, what happens after that. But, Cole, what do you have on the South Carolina edge rusher Kyle Kennard?
Yeah, I'm going to piss on the party here a little bit. The Alabama game, everybody sees the numbers, and they're like, oh my gosh, that was fantastic. He'd be good in a contain. He didn't really win a lot with his pass rush, unless he was on those had a true one-on-one set with either of the tackles, then yeah. But a lot of the times it was just he was just athleting, matching Jalen Milroe and making the plays, tackle for losses, sacks. But as for him as a player himself, I like his motor, love his motor, solid run defender, long. Play strength concerns me a little bit, but not to the point where I'm like, yeah, he needs to be a designated pass rusher. I really, really do like some of his moves and what he does throw. He does have problems with his counters, and if we're being honest, he can get hung up on blocks too long, which does end up giving up bigger plays in the run game. And like I had mentioned before, he's really good at containing the quarterback, but this is not a guy you're going to play at a 5 technique and let him go absolutely haywire on a T twist or anything. You really don't want to bring him inside to the guards, because I really think he would get completely cleaned up there. He plays a little light in his ass. Regardless of that, he does play with solid play strength. I want to see him kind of go to Mobile and show off a little more strength, maybe add on a couple more pounds, and just show that he can really fill out to be a little bit bigger of an edge rusher, because he does look a little bit lankier on film than the weight would suggest, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
I do kind of like that 260, 265 range for my pass rushers, so maybe it's just a little bit of bias here. But overall, Kennard, I have a second to a third round grade on him. I think he's a fine player. I do think that his numbers were inflated a little bit, kind of similar to what I said about Princely. However, I do like Kennard a little bit more than Princely.
Okay. Anthony, what do you have on Kyle Kennard, and what do you think he needs to focus on down in Mobile?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to bring the party back to life here because Kyle Kennard, another player, man. If Donovan Ezeriaku is 1A when it comes to motor, Kyle Kennard's probably 1B because, like you said, Bill, he is just constantly going after it, trying to get to the quarterback, trying to make a play. I think he also has a very quick first step. I think he shows that pass rush moveset that you like to see from a guy. I believe it's his 5th season now because he spent so many. He was at Georgia Tech for years, and coming into this year, I don't think anyone would have had higher than probably like a day 3 grade on him. And he just came out and showed how hard he's been working to improve his game. I watched that LSU game, and Will Campbell, who at the time was everyone's OT1 or OT2, and he beat him. He beat him bad that whole multiple times. Him and Dylan Stewart on the other side were just whooping those LSU tackles all day long. And that was when I knew Kyle Kennard was a player I was going to like. I do think he needs to work. I don't think he has a great bend either, similar to Princely. I kind of what Cole was saying, if he does commit more to just being like a solid 4-3 edge player and being able to just like put his hand in the dirt and set the tone from the edge there, I think that's fine. Does need to work on having some kind of counter, some kind of inside move. I think that would really help his game too. That's definitely something he can work on both in Mobile and when he gets to the pros. But another guy, just a football player that I think you want to have on your football team. And if he is an edge rusher that finds his way into the first round too, I wouldn't have any complaints about it.
So, Anthony, I have a question for you. If you were to compare Kennard to Darius Robinson, Marshawn Nealand, or Chris Braswell, who were either late first or second round picks last year, how would Kennard grade relative to those 3 players?
So as prospects, I was lower on Robinson than most people. I had him as like a 3rd round guy. Kennard and Braswell are probably pretty close. They're probably like in the same exact kind of range, late day 1, early day 2 kind of guys. And then Nealand is probably like middle day 2 for me. So like, Kennard, Braswell fighting for the first spot, and then Nealand, and then Robinson would be my order.
Cool.
Okay. So go ahead, Jim.
You ready for the next one?
I was going to say, let's dive into it. So offensive lineman Wyatt Milum from West Virginia, 6'6", 317. The big thing about Wyatt Milum is he is an elite pass protector. This is a guy who's very good in pass protection. At one point, in 2023, 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, only 9 pressures across 305 pass blocking snaps. So he is very good at it. In addition to that, this is a guy, he's got experience at both tackle positions, both left and right tackle in his time at West Virginia. Has a very good football IQ, very technically proficient. The big thing that I love about Milum is he has an impressive athleticism. There are rumors that this guy at 6'6", 317 is going to run a sub 5-second 40-yard dash time, which I know we always talk about the corners and wide receivers running 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. But if I've got a guy who's 315, 317 pounds and he's running faster than 5 seconds, that's moving. The big thing for me, though, with Milum is he is a little bit light at 317 to play that tackle. I like my tackles to be closer to the 330 marker. He's going to need to add some more functional mass to get up to that point, so it's not just a matter of just putting on additional weight. By that same token, I don't want him to add too much and lose out on some of that athletic ability that he's got. He also could show a little bit more of a consistent knee bend. Sometimes he's bending from the waist, giving up unnecessary leverage. But This is a guy that I think can play at either left or right tackle. I've heard some people say he should slide inside to guard. He hasn't really done that in his career, so I don't know if that's necessarily going to translate very well. As well as if you're going to slide him inside, you're still going to have him add that mass. So at that point, might as well just have him add it and stay on the outside. For me, he is my O-line number 6 with a firm second-round grade. I'm going to go back in the time machine for this comp, and Anthony, you know him very well. DeBrickashaw Ferguson when he was at Virginia. That same style of tackle, very good pass protector, very athletic, just a little bit on the lighter edge of things. Needed to see him add some mass. But Cole, how do you feel about Wyatt from West Virginia?
Yeah, I'm a big sucker for the 6'4" to 6'6", like 315, 320 range tackles. I've brought that up somewhere in private talking to you guys. As well as the pass protector aspect. I love his kick set, vertical set. Ask him to get hands on, just get a quick jolt, hand placement's on point every time. Never gonna change. My concerns start to come in with his arm length, and while he is actually 6'6", this is the first tackle I believe I have verifieds for that is actually at the height that is listed. A lot of them are shorter by an inch, half an inch, or even 2 inches. Wyatt Milum is the first one who is actually 6'6". I have him at 32 inches in his arm length, which it's scary. That's going to turn a lot of teams off if that really is the verifieds. But I have no concerns about his weight profile. I do think maybe he needs to just add a little more weight room strength, just get stronger, because like there were times where not only his arms are short, but your arms are short and your clamp's not that strong. You're asking to just kind of get like work. There was a rep against Penn State that was 100% of pressure, or it might have even been a hit, where Abdul Carter, Danny Dennis Sutton just kind of worked him with their length and then just bowled him. And he did end up recovering. It was a sick recovery. But the first, like, second and a half of that play was just miserable for Milum, who had an awesome game that game. That was like, if you're going to watch any offensive tackle film, I really do suggest that being one of your top priorities. But with Milum, I'm not really concerned about the arm length because of how sound he is technically. I don't think he should move into guard. I don't think I feel like he'd be an awkward fit at guard. That's kind of the best way I can really describe it. I do like him at tackle. Preferably, I'd like him at right tackle more than left, because I feel more comfortable having the shorter arm players out, not on the quarterback's blind side. That would just kind of be where I would be more comfortable with as a from a coaching standpoint. But that's kind of what I think about Milum. I have a firm second round grade on him. He's my OT 9. Now, granted, I am higher on about 3 guys that not a lot of people are, but I have a comp to him for Andres Pete, pass protector. About that 320, 325 range, like that taller but shorter arm tackle who has nice movement skills. And that's really what I think Wyatt Milum can be for a team is you take him early in the second round and you're not going to look back. You're going to have a tackle for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. I like it. Anthony, what do you have on Wyatt Milum from West Virginia?
So I actually think, and I do not disagree with anything you guys have been saying about his pass protection. It's great stuff. He has a great skill set there. I do think his run blocking is not to be ignored. It is, he is strong. He's able to move with his feet well. He can play in gap end zone run schemes. I think he has that skill set for it. I'm not fully on the side of kick him inside, but I think I'm closer to it than you guys are, because I just don't see the length issue not being an issue if he stays at tackle. And I don't even disagree. Like, yes, he's very technically sound, and I don't think he would be like a liability at tackle. But I do think because he is so strong and so able to, he plays with such strong hands. He's able to get such a good grip on defenders and being able to hold them so well. I think he can make that move. It would probably take some coaching and some time to get used to it, but I don't think that change would be as awkward for him as you might think. Because I think the other issue with him too is overwhelming athleticism will beat him because he has those limitations. As gifted as he is with his footwork and technical ability, whatever, like he will just lose to people who are just superior athletes. So I like him. I still think he is a day two guy. I really think he is a starter in the NFL. Whether that's a starter at tackle, I'm not fully there.
So, Anthony, question. Do you think he's a day one starter? Like you draft him and he's going to be starting week one his rookie year?
I could, yeah, I think so. I think you could take him.
Is that the definition on your grading scale? Is that the definition of a first round grade, or is your grading scale different?
I mean, it depends. If I think you're going to be a day one starter, then yeah, you're going to be a top 50 player in my view. Okay. I don't, because if you're providing that immediate value to a team, and we're not even like thinking about projecting your growth and how you improve and get more experience, if you're already immediately providing value to a team like that, then yeah, I think that's a player you need to prioritize taking early.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. So next one on the docket, we're going to stick with the tackles, and Cole's already smiling, folks. If you thought he was high on Donovan Ezeriaku, then strap in, because this one's going to be a fun one. But Aireontae Ersery from Minnesota, 6'6", 331. This guy, he's got the size and frame that we've already hit on a couple of other folks. Very good run blocker. This is an exceptional run blocker at tackle, consistently creating lanes, driving people out of the way. Shows really good hand placement and sustaining those blocks in the run game as well. Shows a really good anchor in pass protection too. This is a guy that can hold his own on those bull rushes and hold his own with some of those stronger players. My concern with Aireontae Ersery is that he does struggle with speed rushers coming off the edge. His kick slide is a little bit slower than I'd like for a left tackle. He does need to improve on that and his overall quickness. His hand timing in pass sets can be consistent, especially when dealing with stunts and blitzes. Sometimes he just gets his hand in the wrong place. At the next level, it's going to end up being flags in some cases. I would like to see him take it slow and be eased in as a tackle, just because I want to see him get eased into the complexity of NFL defenses and eased into those faster edge rushers in the NFL. But all in all, this is a guy, he's high on my board. He's my offensive line number 5. I have him right at the top of round number 2. My comp for him, Colton Miller, when he was at UCLA, that same style of tackle, does a lot of things well. You just want to see him kind of get eased in. Could he be a day one starter in the NFL? For me, absolutely. Do I want him to be? Kind of depends on how his preseason goes. If you see him in the preseason and he's able to handle some of those quicker edge rushers off the edge, absolutely throw him out there on opening day. But if not, give him about a month, let him get eased into the speed of the game, and then throw him as a blindside protector. I think he can be a left tackle of the future. But Cole, I will turn it over to you to give the fans what they want, and that's your take on Aireontae Ersery.
Aireontae Ersery is the freaking man. I just want to start it off by saying that my favorite pastime right now is getting curled up into my bed and watching Aireontae Ersery kick the shit out of people. There's a clip against Iowa. His Iowa film was fantastic, by the way. That's my number one. If you want to go watch offensive lineman film, Aireontae Ersery versus Iowa is probably the best watch I've had in a long time. There's plays. He's so physical that he loves to hand fight, which is weird for an offensive lineman. He loves to clamp on and jolt you and torque you until you don't want to be clamped onto him anymore. he shuts down contains. He shuts down the smaller edge rushers if he gets his hands on. I do agree. His feet can get a little slow, and he can just kind of get outmaneuvered by the speedier guys, which you're 6'6", 330. It's going to happen. You wish it didn't, but it's game plannable. You know how many offensive tackles in the NFL aren't left on an island when they're this big? It's very few. And while I do think Ersery can develop into one of those type of guys who are huge, super strong, a little bit slower on their feet, but don't need any tight end help with the faster defensive ends, Ersery can develop into one of those guys. I firmly believe this is the best offensive tackle in the class, and I firmly believe he would have been my OT3 in last year's class. He's my number 6 player on my board. Number 5 even, not even 6. Number 5 on my board. Sky high. This is a true first-round grade. He would have to absolutely blow up at the Senior Bowl to even make me think about dropping him a little bit. I mean, I'm watching him just kick and just smack helmets down, and the defenders are going down with his hands. I have a comp to Andrew Thomas. I'm that high on Ersery, where I think he can be an Andrew Thomas without the injury concerns. I love his film. Go watch Iowa if you have free time after the next show. It's a beautiful watch. Man, I can't say enough good things about Aireontae Ersery, but I don't want to take too long to go over it. So
we got to get Brandon Thorne and Cole in the same room and debate Aireontae Ersery.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
That's a whole episode and a half. Anthony, I know that's probably pretty tough to follow, but what do you have on Ersery from Minnesota?
Yeah, you're really setting me up for failure here, Bill. But no, actually, I'm actually not that far off from Cole. Honestly, Aireontae Ersery is 11 on my board, and he's my tackle too. I really think he is just everything you want in a ideal left tackle. The frame, the length. This is going to be a weird comparison, but just follow me for a second. This is kind of how I felt about Tavondre Sweat last year, in that you have these absolute mammoth men, and they just move and are so athletic for how large they are. And it is just any position where those two things come together for me, I'm automatically going to love the player. I do think my biggest critique with him is the hand technique is inconsistent, needs to be refined a bit. And there are times where I do think he loses leverage a bit and can get beaten that way. But all of the pieces are there for a franchise left tackle, and that is just not something very common in this draft class. So that alone, I think, gives him that value. And yeah, I think he is a first-round player.
Okay.
Before we move on, I do want to quickly say Aireontae Ersery has 34 and I think 3/8 inch of an arm, so almost 34 and a half inches arm length, which is wicked.
And remind the audience for what the threshold for a tackle is, Cole.
33, I believe.
Got it. So he's at least an inch longer than what a standard threshold for a tackle is, according to you.
Yep.
So for anybody listening, that's going to be an issue with this offensive line class, is you're going to hear tackles don't have length, and you're hearing that Ersery is going to check the length box, as well as several other things on tape. But the length will be questioned by several of the, let's say, more popular offensive tackles.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm glad Anthony and Cole kind of gushed over Ersery, because now I'm going to gush over Shemar Turner, and I'm going to pound the table and break it, because Shemar Turner is my guy of this class. 6'4", I've seen differing on his weight. I've seen 285. I've seen 290. I've seen 300. That's going to be one of the biggest question marks I have on him, is what he comes in as far as weight size. But this is a guy, exceptional first step quickness off the snap. He can line up anywhere from a zero tech to a stand-up edge rusher, so he can play anywhere along the defensive line. He can play inside. He can play out. He's got fluid lateral movement, moves sideline to sideline very well, an impressive combination of size and mass as well. Shows really good hand usage to counter offensive linemen's initial blocks, and he shows a really good read direct ability, just knocking people out of the way. The big thing for him, though, I do need to see him work on his pass rush repertoire at Mobile. There isn't much in his pass rush tool bag right now, so I'd like to see him adjust on that a little bit. And I'd also like to see him get more consistent as an interior run defender. All that being said, guys of his size do not move in the way that Shemar Turner moves. Guys of his size do not play at multiple positions along the defensive line. Guys of his size do not play the way he should in the NFL. He is my defensive tackle number 2, right behind Mason Graham, a locked-in first-round grade. I think his absolute floor is pick number 15. Hot take all you want, but I think that's the way Shemar Turner is. Anthony, I'll flip the coin to you. How do you feel about Shemar Turner from Texas A&M?
Yeah, you're flying in a hot air balloon with Shemar Turner, and I'm more like the Hindenburg. Look, I'll listen here. I'll start with the good. I do think he moves very well for his size, which I know I just raved about as something I love. I think he has the length. I think he is a very good athlete. I've seen him win with speed and power. I see all that. I do think the lateral quickness is there, but he still doesn't consistently get in the backfield for me enough, especially when you have 2 first-round edge players next to you. I don't think the production has been enough for me. I don't think he holds anchor well enough on a consistent basis. I think he can get kind of knocked off his spot a little too many times on the inside. And quite honestly, there are several plays in his history where you can, I'll say it nicely, you can question his ethics a bit. There's a low blow on an Ole Miss player. There's a very egregious late hit on an Arkansas player during a scrum for a fumble. Those things for me are just not things that sit right with me. I think he's a day 3 player that you can bet on the traits, but I'm not sold on as a long-term NFL guy.
Okay. So, Cole, it sounds like me and Anthony are high variance guys. What do you have on Shemar Turner?
Yeah, I'll meet somewhere in the middle. I liked him during summer scouting a lot. I didn't think he was a defensive tackle. He's kind of in that like 3-4, like 1 to like 0 to like 2I sort of feel, which is like not his game in my opinion at all. Like he needs to be in like tight front, like at the very minimum he needs to be like playing a loose 3 tech consistently. Can he play more of that interior role? Sure. But that first step is wicked. His athleticism is wicked, and I would much rather you play that sort of towards the tackles or towards the guards than on the center. Because a lot of the time, if you're playing the interior, there's just so many moving components. If you're playing a nose or a 1 or a 2I or a 2, where you're not getting the one-on-ones where you can really win with that quickness and that first step that Shemar Turner has because of the slide protections, full protections, whatever you really want to do there. I think he's an edge. I think he has some nice traits to him. I kind of have him like a top 115, 120-ish type of range. Okay. So I am a little bit lower and way lower than Bill. But I think he can be a solid player. I mean, if Mason Smith went second round last year, I see no reason why Shemar Turner can't go into the top 75 picks this year. Would I agree with it? No. I didn't agree with the Mason Smith pick. I didn't agree with the McKinley Jackson pick in the 3rd round last year. It happened. There's going to be D-line guys that people reach on because they're uber athletic, just like Mason Smith. And in my opinion, I thought Jackson was somewhat athletic, but yeah, it's going to be interesting with Turner. I want to see him play some edge in the Senior Bowl for sure and see how he does against those tackles after being forced to put on a good chunk of weight, because I had him at 272-ish before he even moved over to the D-line. So, like, his 2023 tape, he was like 275, and now he's closer to 295 from what I've heard.
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on that a little bit. So to piggyback on like what Anthony and Cole have said. So Turner is playing next to two likely first-round edges in Shemar Stewart and Nick Scourton, right? So he probably got moved inside because he was still one of the best defensive linemen on the team, but he might have been playing this season out of position. Mm-hmm. So from a Senior Bowl perspective, I would definitely look for Turner to play as many defensive line spots as possible, because there's a good chance that he's going to be moved to edge if he drops a little bit of weight. I think when Newton Owen gave the scouting report on him, I think it was very similar to what Cole said. If he drops a little bit of weight and can play edge, that may be a better way to use his twitchiness than to play 285 as an interior lineman in the NFL. So I think from a Senior Bowl perspective, I think seeing what he is at the weigh-in, as well as seeing where he takes his practice reps and where he takes his game reps, that's something that I'm definitely paying attention to when we're in Mobile.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And another thing is why I think he did move into the interior as opposed to playing that like third rotational edge type role, because they have a hefty rotation on there, is Cassius Howell is really, really damn good. So you can't keep a guy like that on the bench and not rotating in. So I think they moved Shemar Turner down because it's easier to rotate in with a bigger DT and Albert Regis than rotate with four guys at edge instead of just moving him down and rotating with two at the IDL spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So big finish here in the trenches. Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas. And if you thought I was high on Shemar Turner, I'm even higher on Landon Jackson. 6'7", 280 pounds. This guy has some freakish length, and I'm talking freakish. Uses his hands very effectively to shed blockers and execute pass rush moves. Very good ankle flexibility. This is a guy I have no concerns about getting around the edge. Physically imposing. That 6'7", 280 is misleading because it's a 280 brick house. This is a guy that's not 280 carrying a lot of bad weight. My biggest notes for him is sometimes he's a little bit stiff moving laterally, moving side to side, especially in run defense. And he does tend to play with higher pad level than you'd like. It's a little harder being 6'7", trying to get lower, but he is a little bit high. All in all, Landon Jackson is my edge number 3 on my big board and a firm first round grade for me. I think when he goes down to Mobile, I want to see him work on that stiffness moving laterally. I want to see him work with just a little bit more pass rush repertoire, especially when it comes to counter moves. But Anthony, what do you have about Landon Jackson from Arkansas?
So Buzz Killington back again. I like Landon Jackson. You can't listen. He's got the size and length again that we love to see. I think his hands are great. I love his moves. He has a great cross chop move. I struggle. He feels a little too tweenery. I'm not sold on him being a 4-3 edge because of just how high he plays. He doesn't have that bend, that ability to get around offensive tackles. I don't see him being a long-term outside edge rusher. But I also don't think he can kick inside because I don't think he's strong enough to do that. So I'm not sure exactly what he's going to be at the next level unless he just improves his overall athleticism, I guess. But I like him. I do think he has a role in the NFL. He's a guy that I would probably say is a 3rd, 4th round grade. Maybe he carves out some kind of Calais Campbell esque role, but I struggle with Landon Jackson. But there's just so many things to like about him, and I will say too, another guy you talk about motor and effort, he gives you that. There's no question about that. He loves playing the game and love making things happen. So again, somebody you want on your team. I'm just not sold on where exactly on the team he'd be.
Okay. Cole, it sounds like another high variance between me and Anthony, so I'm going to let you come on in with Landon Jackson. Where do you fall on the timeline?
Yeah, I'm going to piss on your party again, Bill. I'm not going to lie to you. Man. I'm going to start with the Oklahoma State game. That was brutal. It was not a fun watch. That Oklahoma State game was bad, in my opinion. He's playing against two tackles who I thought were almost draftable grades. After that game, I was like, oh my gosh, they locked up Landon Jackson. These guys deserve some hype. They weren't NFL caliber tackles. And Landon Jackson got shut down bad. He gets stonewalled at the line of scrimmage, and it almost shuts down automatically with his pass rushing. He has good tools, and he has those splash games. You look at Alabama in 2023, and it's like, that's there, but you got to look at it also. He played on the left side a lot. They were abusing freshman Caden Proctor, who has no movement skills at all whatsoever. And when you're a switched-up athlete like Landon Jackson, that works. I mentioned it with Princely Umamielen. If you are solid to good athlete against a tackle who can't kick set, you're going to win that battle 99% of the time. And that's what happened with Landon Jackson's good games is he just out-athleted the tackles. And I never saw anything that was like, yeah, I could totally see some like top 50 hype here. I have him about my edge 20 and a third to fourth round grade, just like Anthony. I don't see it. And this could come back to bite me straight in the ass after the Senior Bowl, where he could go completely undefeated in one-on-ones and win the damn Senior Bowl MVP for all we know. But that game tape is just, oh man, it's just really bad in my opinion, and I can't get over it. I don't know. I'm just hung up on it.
But Cole, one-on-ones at Mobile could change him from like edge 30 to moving up into the area where Princely is?
He is in the area where Princely's at. He's at edge 20 and Princely's at 16. But
got it.
I'm sure if he wins one-on-ones, which is like the biggest event at Mobile, I think even bigger than the game for all positions. If he wins those, and those are the events I hold the most stock in, if he wins those, I have no problem kind of talking myself into moving him up to that like Josiah Stewart, getting that a Sutton range for me.
Okay.
All right. So now comes the main event for folks that are here with us. Next week on the Draft Professor, we have our what we call Quarterbacks Week. Discovery Channel's got Shark Week. We've got Quarterbacks Week. It's all things signal callers. And since we're covering some Senior Bowl previews tonight, we figured we'd dive into this signal caller class. Before we do that, a small amount of housekeeping, though. Make sure that if you're watching, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the Draft Professor channel, and turn on notifications. We have daily draft content all week next week with Quarterbacks Week and just every night in general. Make sure you follow our lovely moderator, Jim, at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic on X. Make sure you follow me on X at Sparks Scouting. Make sure you follow Anthony on X as well, Anthony_Russo97 on X. And make sure you follow Cole on X as well, ColeP_NFL, all lowercase. Before I kick off the signal callers, Jim, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I want to remind everybody watching. So first of all, thank you for watching. So please follow all four people that you see here on X. There's draft content on X put out by us every day. As Bill said, subscribe to the channel, YouTube, turn on notifications. We do have another podcast that is starting at 9 o'clock. So this is very structured content. We have a list of players we're going to cover. We've got 6 quarterbacks to go. And then we're going to be turning around and we're just going to have a draft roundtable, which is going to be more of a free-for-all discussion. You'll see a couple of familiar faces, because I think Bill and I at minimum are going to be there. I don't know about Anthony and Cole. We've also got a lot of new faces showing up, some that you've never seen on the channel and some that you've seen on the channel a few times. So if you're enjoying the content of the Draft Professor, we do this every day. We've got something coming at you every day. Also want to give a shout out to Jake in the chat. So Jake, you can catch his podcast on Mondays on our channel. So for hashtag Quarterbacks Week, you'll be hearing what a quarterback scouting report should look like for myself, Jake, Josh, and Greg. So with that, Bill, we've got 6 quarterbacks to go. And my suggestion is we kind of talk about maybe the boxes they check or what we're hoping to see in Mobile as opposed to a full-blown scouting report just based upon time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first one on the docket's Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. As a signal caller, the big thing that I want to see from him is his mechanics leave a lot to be desired. And when you talk mechanically, his upper body and lower body do not match, and it causes his arm strength to suffer. I've said it on X, and you can go take a look at the take, but this is a guy who's a gunslinger that doesn't have the top flight arm to be a gunslinger. Right now, for me, I need to see him improve on those mechanics in order to improve that arm strength. But right now, for me, I've got him as my QB4, which probably says that it's pretty high, but it also shows the state of the quarterback class. I have him as a round 3 grade. Comp-wise, it's Jake Plummer from Arizona and Denver, that same kind of really high, but really low lows. And I'd also like to see some consistency from Jaxson Dart when we look out at Ole Miss. So what we'll do to make sure that we can give all 6 quarterbacks an equal amount of time, we're going to turn it over to QB number 2 on the docket, which QB number 2 is Riley Leonard from Notre Dame. And for this one, Cole, I'm going to let you talk about the Irish prospect and what boxes he checks for you and what you want to see from him in Mobile.
Yeah, I just want to see him be accurate in the one-on-ones. There's some downfield accuracy problems and middle of the field accuracy problems with Leonard. It pops up all the time. I also want to see him make it to Mobile and not die before that, because he has major injury concerns from Duke, which really hurts his main keepsake, which is a big mobile quarterback, but it seems like now he doesn't really move in the pocket. So I'd love to see him in any of the individual drills. If there's anything that really shows off some quarterback mobility, just love to see that kind of improve. I have a day 3 type of grade on him, and this is just Daniel Jones. I don't mean a helmet scout with the Duke thing, but it just feels very Daniel Jones-like to me.
And I've heard the Daniel Jones comp before. I don't think that's far off.
It's the same comp I have, so you're not very far off at all. So
it's the same comp I have, so you're not far off at all.
Nice.
So that's 3 boxes checked there. So for the next box checking, I'm going to turn it over to you, Anthony, to talk about Tyler Shough from Louisville.
Sure, yeah. I think Tyler Shough is a pretty solid quarterback. I think he can make throws in the short and the intermediate. Puts really good velocity on his passes, I think. He is 25 years old, which speaks to his experience and being able to see the field well and being able to make pre-snap, being able to see things pre-snap. It also speaks to he's 25 years old and he will be a 26-year-old rookie next year. Personally, for me, age isn't a huge factor, but I know that means a lot to some people. He is another one, very lengthy injury history, and that combined with the age is pretty problematic. Biggest thing for Mobile, mechanics are just wildly inconsistent. Really needs to hammer down on that. That inconsistency with his mechanics really affects his throws in general, particularly I think his deep passes. So if he can hammer those down, I think he is somebody that could be the typical 10-year sort of backup quarterback that you see. This is a bit of a throwback, not that long ago. Kind of gave me Zach Mettenberger vibes. That was the name that I thought of, the similar kind of build and again, a guy that had those mechanic problems but had that NFL arm. But yeah, I think like right now, sort of a day 3, late day 3 probably. You can take him. He has the arm, but there's a lot of parts of his game that need work.
Yep, absolutely. So the next one on the docket, Dillon Gabriel from Oregon. Cole, I'm going to turn this one back over to you. What do you want to see as far as Dillon Gabriel in Mobile? What boxes does he check for you?
Not many. He doesn't check many boxes. I'm not a fan of Dillon Gabriel. I want to see his arm look competent. I really don't. He has some zip on some throws every now and again, but it's overall not a consistent, like, wow, this guy's got a little pocket rocket like Bryce Young had. Really, really solid arm strength for a guy that size. This is like below average. It's honestly probably worse than Shore Sanders. So I just want to see him like make some tight window throws. Kind of just show some of that zip. Really, really smart guy between the ears. He's going to be able to break down a lot of coverages as well in the actual game itself. So I expect this guy to be a candidate for the MVP. And if he wins that MVP, then I'll definitely be thinking about moving him back up to that top 100, top 150-ish area. But right now he's like a top 165, 170 type guy for me. I'm just not really a huge fan of the size and the physical tools aspect of it.
Okay. My comp for him is Jeff Garcia. Do you have a comp for Dillon Gabriel?
I don't. If I did, it would probably sort of be in that yeah, no, I really don't actually, more I think about it. He was really hard to comp because you don't see a lot of small arm quarterbacks with literally nothing else besides their head.
Yep.
I've seen Kellen Moore is a popular comp, and I think that's pretty accurate.
Yep, that's a pretty accurate and fair one. So the next quarterback on the docket, I'm going to field. It is Jalen Milroe from Alabama. And for me, the two biggest boxes that I like to see from a quarterback checked are arm talent and athletic ability. And by arm talent, I mean the ability to throw it with zip at the short, intermediate, and deep levels of the field. Milroe has that in spades. He can make every single throw that you ask with a flick of the wrist. Is he always accurate with it? Not necessarily in the short and intermediate game. That's what I'd want to see him work on in Mobile. He's also a very physical runner and a very long striding runner. For me right now, and it's probably a little bit spicy for the field, he is my QB3 behind Warden Sanders, and I think he's a round 2 prospect. And I want to see him go down to Mobile and solidify that and push his way up into round 1. My comp for him, it goes back to the ye olden days, Vince Young of Texas and the Titans, that same physical, strong-armed runner who also had question marks about playing at the quarterback position as well. So with that being said, we now come to our final quarterback of the evening.
I must have missed a slide.
Oh, we must have missed a slide, but either way, we can talk about it. It's Will Howard from Ohio State University. And Cole, I'll let you field Ohio State's signal caller. What boxes does he check for you, and what do you want to see from him in Mobile?
Will Howard's also the freaking man. He was my QB 4 or 5 summer scouting. I was top 50 on him. And honestly, I'm not going to shy away from that. I want to see him be consistent with his reads and be more accurate in the intermediates. It gets wonky and he throws really stupid interceptions, and it's really only in the intermediate. He has a nice deep ball, super accurate short, good physical runner. He's not going to blow you away athletically, but I want to see him just pick apart the intermediate levels of the field. Kind of fun fact, he's from about 20 minutes away from where I live. So I got to see him when he was in high school before he went to Kansas State.
Okay.
And he was raw then, and I still think he's a little bit raw now. Granted, I was 14 when I first saw him, but yeah, he's still a little raw. I just kind of want to see him refine some of the footwork and the intermediate accuracies. But he has all the intangibles you want. He has a relatively good processor, has a nice arm, solid accuracy all over the board, and can make some wow moments in the pocket. I'm thinking back to, I believe, the Texas game where he played flawlessly against Texas in 2023. And he's probably going to do it again in about 5 days or 6 days, however long it is or so. So I'm really excited for Will Howard specifically, and I think he can sneak into that second to third round area with a good showing for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to go rapid fire on this last little part here. One name, and we'll go round robin. One name who's got the most to gain at Mobile. Anthony, who do you have?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say it's probably a quarterback. You know what? I'll say Will Howard. I think he's a guy that like has those tools. I wasn't sold on him, and now I'm a little more like willing to accept it. I think it has to be a quarterback just of how devoid this class is of top end talent.
Okay. Cole, what about you?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna say my guy Jalen Milroe. I want to see him be more accurate in the one-on-ones and just kind of see him develop there a little bit. Maybe tighten up that release because it's really weird.
Yep.
Like really, really weird. But other than that, just want to see him go out there and dominate because he's a great person, great leader, and I have no doubt that the potential is there to be a first-round pick.
Yep, absolutely. So I would have said Jalen Milroe as well, but since Cole took him already, I'll be the fun guy. I'm going to say it's Aireontae Ersery in a class that's lacking top-end offensive tackle talent. He's that next guy up, and I'd like to see him kind of mirror what Cole talked about earlier in the show. But I think if it's not a tackle like Ersery or Milum, it's one of these quarterbacks in Dart or Milroe as well. So with that said, Jim, I'll turn the keys back over to you, sir.
So I was going to say Milroe or Ersery, but I'm going to be very specific. What I want to see is Milroe the passer, right? That's like we have a pretty good idea of who Milroe is as a football player and a runner. We want to see more passing.
Yep.
I think that's where if Milroe shows the ability to pass and accurately at different parts of the field, and then Ersery right after that. So. But as far as some housekeeping, so thank you to all of you watching. Hit that subscribe, hit that like on YouTube, please and thank you. We have quarterbacks week next week, and I would like to outline what you're going to see. We have 5 nights dedicated to quarterbacks. So even though we just went through 6 quarterbacks in probably about 20 minutes. Next week, you're going to get literally 5 podcasts on quarterbacks. Monday night, Jake, Josh, Greg are going to talk about what is a scouting report, what does it mean to get a first-round grade, what does it mean to get a second-round grade. Very similar to what Anthony and I had a back and forth maybe about 30 minutes ago on this podcast about if he says somebody's an immediate starter, does that imply he's a first-round grade? It's going to be conversations such as that, as well as if we say a quarterback checks all the boxes, what boxes are we checking, right? So we're going to kind of define what we're looking for from a scouting report. On Tuesday, you're going to see Bill and Parker and me go through 5 quarterbacks in the NFL: Drew Lock, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and I always forget the 5th one.
Jalen Hurts.
Thank you. And we're going to kind of go through what were their scouting reports and who are they in the NFL? And ironically, I think all 5 of those guys match their scouting reports. So you have to understand what a scouting report is and not just say, I'm drafting that quarterback at number 1 or I'm drafting that quarterback at number 32. We want to talk about how we kind of match that up. Yep. Wednesday, we're going to talk about the 2026 quarterback class. So that's going to be me and Randall, okay, talking 2026 quarterbacks. So you have an idea as to what the depth of that quarterback class is. Then on Thursday, we come back. It's going to be new. It's going to be Owen. It's going to be Bill. We're going to cover the top 5 quarterbacks. Top 5 on the Draft Professor. Sanders, Ward, Milroe, Dart, McCord. Any quarterback not named is going to be covered on Friday.
Yep.
And we will go into way more detail than this podcast did in the quarterbacks. So scouting reports, what different people think of them, what they need to work on, or what the holes are in their game. So that's quarterbacks week. Never been done before, but we're the draft professor. We're blazing our own path. We're not following anybody else's. So we also have a podcast coming at you in about 30 minutes. It's our first draft roundtable. I have no idea how it's going to go, but conversations with these guys are always really, really good. Like, I got a front row seat. I just get to start the podcast. I can sit here and listen and chime in my opinions. And the draft roundtable is going to be everybody else chiming in their opinions. So this should be a lot of fun. So
yep.
On behalf of Cole, Anthony, Bill, myself, and all 21 of us at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again in about 35 minutes.
Class is dismissed, folks.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on YouTube, X, and Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. If you have a moment, try using some of the Draft Professor mock draft functionality, including a first-round challenge, a second-round challenge, rank players, and draft a team. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on our daily draft podcast tomorrow.